Okay, so anything to start, or can we jump into discussion of the slides?
You want approval of the minutes?
Approval of minutes would be good. I didn't put that in the agenda.
I didn't have any problems.
No,
All in favor?
aye.
Or any objections? Hearing none. They're approved. Okay, moving on to the final reports that were given to Peter, and I don't know if they've gone to the select board yet. I did actually tell Peter after our December meeting that he would prefer to have our own discussion today about the reports and give our opinion to the select board. So that's why that's on the agenda. I don't know what they've seen, what they haven't yet.
I think we should start by thanking Kathy for
Yeah,
a tremendously comprehensive, thorough and excellent report.
yep, here.
Yeah, a lot of great material.
But I
I
tend to
will
agree that
say, one of the things that wasn't included in the report was really a discussion of the retail market analysis. Because that wasn't a huge part of the scenarios. But I did look at, what I did on the interchange 35 study. And there hasn't, that's within, really a half, within a mile of center school. And the retail demand issues really haven't changed. So I think that as people think about options, I would reference that. I did send Jenny a copy of that. I know Judy has a copy.
It's
Probably
on-
in your
it's on-
files,
it's
Carolyn, but
online.
I can send everyone a copy again.
He put it online somewhere. I'm not.
I mean, it's such a good report, but it's almost impossible to find.
I think it should be.
Really?
Well, I'm happy to email it out and make
Well,
it easier
I
for
can do
people.
that as we're
that would be
saying.
helpful. Thank you.
Carolyn,
Because I think it
Carolyn.
adds a lot, there's a lot of detail on demographics and as well as retail demand and.
I think if you look at the exit 35 page on the town website, it should now show up there. If it doesn't, I can get it to you so that you can post it, but thank you. I think Pete made a push to get all the studies that the town had paid for up, and I think that was one of them.
And I think it's more than just because we paid for it, and it's nice to have. As I think you guys know, I'm very concerned that the town's going to go with something that sounds like a nice idea and has no market research validation at all. It just scares me to no end because it's natural human instinct. I want to do it, and if I want to do it, everyone must want to do it as well. And it's just not the case. And so I really think we need to encourage the select board in whatever we do to follow the money, to understand what really is in demand and what's viable and how we make it viable as opposed to, yeah, we were sitting around a table and, after a couple drinks, we thought this is a good idea. That's just my 2 cents. And it's not the concern of this group, it's a concern of any group because it's just, again, as I said, human instinct. Did I
I
did I quiet the crowd?
What do you say?
I'm amused by your philosophy of life that if you want it, everybody else does too. But I know Stephen has some questions.
Well, yeah, only if we were gonna go through each of the scenario, independently. But if your preference is to just get a sense of what everybody's preference is. I mean, I could, like Jonathan, I know what my preferences are, and I want everyone else to have the same I'm kidding.
I'd like to know where we stand. On the options. Is that a place people are comfortable going and then?
Sure.
I'm comfortable going there, but I'm also a little leery because I think the eventual option will be the one where we find the strongest partner,
I'm sorry,
where we find the strongest partner.
oh, yeah.
And at this point, I don't think, at least among the two mixed use, I'm jumping ahead, but, I think we should we shouldn't present any conclusions until, I think we should look for partners
Mhm.
for everything that rates highly.
Yes.
Well, we can also
Well,
make some guess about whether there is going to be a partner that will result in a viable
Yeah.
alternative. And I mean, that's where I come from too. The word, if I use the word viable over and over, that's sort of my North Star in this. And my preference among the scenarios is based almost exclusively upon viability.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I also think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't at one point we agreed that perhaps it was going to be not just one partner, but multiple partners based upon their skill set and interest in facets of the building. I guess I wasn't thinking we were going to have just one, but it was potentially more than one.
I didn't mean to imply
Okay.
one.
Okay.
well, I mean, some are mutually exclusive. So that I think, let me rephrase it, because you're right, we need to be looking at partners. Because that determines possibilities. But I think if we rank our priorities,
Mhm.
that leads the way in the directions we start looking.
Mhm.
Mm.
Um. So personally, I would like mixed use. I would not like to limit the use of the building to housing.
I would second that and almost say that mixed use meaning mixed commercial or retail use, not including housing, because I don't think anyone in this group has been overly enthusiastic about housing because of the limited options, the number of people it would serve. Um, I thought I had heard that we really were nervous about housing and wanting to just do mixed use in terms of what commercially viable products are out there. I'm not in favor of housing because I don't think it's a good location for housing.
I would agree with that.
Mhm. You know, I guess I'm the last one to, as I read through this report, I had questions that I had are about the probability of landing partners, landing grants, landing somebody other than the town of Whately to fund the $4.5 million that we're looking at. And the the range of funds to support that, at least that Kathy identified, to support the mixed use just seem like long shots to me, whereas the housing funds, the funds that could be available to support either senior or affordable housing, particularly affordable senior housing, seemed to have a much higher probability of gathering those funds. I mean, my instinct about what would be my preferred use, I think that mixed uses come closer, but my sense of what's going to be possible have me leaning towards affordable housing and particularly affordable senior housing.
Are those funds that are potentially available for senior or affordable senior housing? I'm guessing, and I'm not an expert on funding for housing, but I'm guessing that the point system is weighted towards those buildings that serve a greater number of people than the very small number that.
I'm sure you're right.
That's my concern as
Yeah,
well.
I think we ran into that with the first round of trying for grants. I mean, we really at that point thought that housing was the logical solution. In fact, we hadn't really explored mixed use at all. But other than be nice to have something down in the basement, you know, it was a very perfunctory pre-Kathy approach. And we ran into a roadblock because in fact, it's a very expensive project for very few units. And the housing committee wasn't interested, so for CPA money, the
So
prospects were dim.
you brought this up with the housing committee.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the questions I was gonna
Yes,
ask.
the housing committee had a different chair and a different composition then. But they thought that the kind of investment in the building, it's interesting because the cost of these is, each of these projects is sort of, and I'll get the proportions wrong, but say half for preservation of the building and then half for the use, fixing it up for the use. And they never saw that, but also I think they really.
I will say about housing, just to put a context to, it, I mean, state and regional and federal agencies are all gonna look at the cost per unit. And the cost per unit is high here, the cost per square foot is high here.
Yeah.
But you also only have, you are a very small, you have lots of miles and lots of acres, but you have a very small population. So, and you have put housing in your master plan and your, housing production plan. So, and the market general rule of thumb is you can usually finance housing. You cannot make market rate housing work on this property.
Yeah.
It's not efficient. It's not, the subsidies are really critical. Home ownership does not work on this property because you can't use historic tax credits on a home ownership scheme. So if you have, the historic tax credits are absolutely fundamental to making any project work. So that's a given. I will say, the Center School Committee 1 did mention housing in their report and said they talked to Mass Housing and said they didn't want to underwrite a small number of units. I've worked on within the last 3 years, it's a project that's under construction, a housing project where there were only 4 units. It was affordable home ownership, which is a little different. Mass Housing did provide, about $750,000 on that project. So it is possible, but I think what's really critical is that Whately decides what it wants and then pursues it with a passion.
Yeah.
If you're kind of just lukewarm about it. I will say one of the funding possibilities that I did not mention in the report is sometimes it's possible to get your state legislator to put earmark or designate funds, and you do have legislators that are have been around and aren't greenhorns.
Just lost our state
So,
rep.
Well, just one right now, but yeah.
yeah, and I will say, sometimes that can really make or break a project. It's not like it's not like Whately has its hand out a lot.
Yeah.
So I think, but it also means you need to have unity of purpose and get people excited and juiced up about whatever you choose to do. And I did put in the whole issue about, the senior housing market rate, just because I think people think, oh, housing will automatically work, and it really doesn't automatically work.
So to that point, the line item that we could potentially get would be for any use, not just residential, as I understand it, especially with the drive for economic development in rural areas. Um, Secondly, you know, you're right. Paul Mark has been around the block a few times, both in the House and in the Senate, so he's got pretty good reach. I know him very, very well, and I could have a conversation with him about his appetite to do something. And then thirdly, if we're going to go that route, January 15th is the time to do it because the budget season is here at the state level. So, it I think that would be a good piece of data to also present to the select board in terms of, again, to use, I think it was Steve that said it, viability of a project. Just again, my 2 cents, but
If you were to talk to Paul Mark, you would be asking for support for the building, not for use.
I would be asking for support for whatever this committee told me to ask for support for.
You're gonna need support from your legislators
Yeah.
for any
I understand
state grant as well as any federal grant.
That I understand.
But once you kind of like go through that round, you may want to have a earmark, and you
Yeah.
can then revisit it, but you gotta get them excited and
Yeah.
wetted and like, okay, this will just push us over
I got
usually.
burned last time by not having a cohesive plan with, I mean, we had letters of support from all sorts of people.
And one of the things you guys wanted was renderings, which which was in the original RFP, even though you didn't have a budget for it. But once you decide what you want, you could, some of the funds can be used for pre-development, and that could include a rendering and more detail. I mean, we kind of did test bits. We didn't do,
Understand.
what they
did
call
remarkable stuff, so.
even a conceptual plan or, rendering. We wanted to see what could work, because you wanted to look at several different options.
Okay, I think the conclusion is that we need to, Paula, can you express an opinion before I draw a conclusion from what I've heard?
You're muted, Paula.
Can barely hear you.
Is she still muted? Thank you, Jonathan, for pointing that out.
All right, am I unmuted now?
Yes,
Good job.
Unmuted now?
yes.
We can hear you.
So
We can-
I'm totally against the housing idea. I'm more for the multi-use if we're going to go through with this. I guess my thoughts on the housing are not what has been expressed. They're a little bit different, but I don't support the idea of housing.
Okay, so
She's the housing committee representative.
okay,
Yes,
all
I know.
right, so
I don't know. if
I
Caroline is-
really think we're in agreement then that housing is what we would pursue if there isn't another viable option, but that it's not any of our first choice.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right.
Okay,
I mean, that, I'm
So-
not speaking for anybody else.
no, right now, we're talking for ourselves, and that's what I'm hearing, and I think that's the position we all feel, and I know Rich does as well, because he spoke to me because he wasn't gonna be able to be here. So, that's the guide then in where we go in terms of looking for grants, partners, and presenting to the select board.
I
Yeah.
mean, I agree, if big capital I, capital F, if we can find a viable path that isn't out.
Yeah, obviously.
Well, we've been working on this, some of us for many years with that
Yeah.
goal.
And
And I
can,
think,
go ahead,
sorry.
Judy.
well, I was just gonna say, when you present this, or whoever presents this to the select board, I think it's important to stress that we're after, what the conditions are. This is sort of what we like, but we know we need enthusiasm, we need a partner, we need viability. And that's gonna determine the ultimate option, rather than going out and saying, look what we've got. Because we don't got it yet, quite.
Right, we don't have it yet, but we've gotten a lot more information now to guide us.
Focused
And the
on
next steps are grants and partners,
in reverse order.
partners and grants.
I think it's kind of preferred use and then looking at, because who you're, it's good to kind of
Yeah.
explore potential partnerships, but you also need to know what you,
Yeah.
and being a little flexible is helpful, but being, knowing what you want is critical.
So to that point,
Making sure it's not just this committee, but what the town wants and the select,
Yeah,
and then
So-
people are excited so that, other people talk about it and,
yeah,
And
we
get
need
them
to build
involved in helping find partners too,
Yeah.
because I think that's critical.
and we need to build a buzz around town to make sure that whatever we finally come up with actually passes, whether it's through debt exclusion or whether it's through a simple vote of town meeting or whatever pathways we need to take. We need a buzz, and we need it to be a positive buzz. But to the point, I'm trying to remember, and I don't remember, what were the commercial uses that seem to be the cream that rises to the top over the past few months that we've discussed? I seem to recall a lot of talk about the kitchen piece, but a scaled down commercial kitchen, and maybe the concept of something that can cater to small retail and maybe mixed, maybe office space. But again, I don't remember. And if I could be helped with that. And then the last thing that I want to stress, because I think it would create interest, is whatever we do, because I don't think that it's viable to do a daycare. But if we could have a system where someone was there at certain hours, if you're going to do office or kitchen, that could serve as a mother's helper, while for kids to have something to do while their mother or father or guardian or whomever is doing the work they need to do, so that it's a quasi support system for families trying to build a business or whatever. I think that would build and you could find partners for that. I think that would build some buzz, because it's both commercial, but it's also social service-esque. But that's just me. So if somebody could remind me what the concepts were that seemed to work.
The options that Kathy priced out for us, the mixed use ones were both, office space on the first floors. Then one had commercial kitchen on on the basement, the other had childcare. And she's done extensive, work presenting diagrams and costs and financing sources for each.
Okay. Okay.
So
I worry about childcare only because there are very few
That's-
childcare models that work.
Well, that's where we get into preferences.
I actually think childcare will work and is financially viable. I think we looked at co-working office on one level and then childcare, and then the other mixed use scenario was co-working office with the timeshare kitchen. You could also do timeshare kitchen on one floor and childcare on another floor. So that wasn't. We looked at all three uses, but that might be an option as well.
Could you do all three at the same time?
Are, when we talking office space, are we talking about community workspace or mid-fit?
Co-working.
Co-working.
So okay,
The office market's pretty soft here, to be honest. If you had a user that you preferred that you wanted to pre-lease or have a pre-lease agreement, that might be viable. But to build speculative office space is really risky. There's a lot of small office spaces, not like you've got a unique,
You're not including co-working in that.
co-working, and co-working can then be used for different uses on weekends and evenings.
Yeah, well, that's one of the features I like about
It gives you some flexibility. It also co-working, it's in the office genre, so to speak, but it's really more that collaborative workspace. And, some co-working spaces people have a designated corral, so, you don't have a large space, so you may not be able to have a designated office, but you can there is enough space for 2 conference rooms, so having that private meeting space and having that conference room capacity might be even people who work at home who might not need the workspace piece may want to take advantage of the conference room piece.
Yeah, that was very important to me when I was consulting.
Yeah.
And having other people around.
Yeah.
And I think it dovetails well with if there's a kitchen so that there's food availability, maybe a partnership between the co-working space and some kind of ability to have a kitchen facility, which is clearly what most of these co-working spaces have, where you have oranges and bananas and coffee and whatever available to workers, and you could create a partnership there at some level as well.
What I like about the co-working, it leverages both of the other options, I think, both childcare and the kitchen. They
Sure.
work well together.
Great.
So just really basic questions about this. Into that scenario, the building would continue to be owned by the town of Whately. Is that your thinking?
Yes.
yes.
And who would collect the rent? Who would handle the reservations? Who would open the door? Are we talking about farming this out to somebody to manage the operation?
Well, it was my assumption that the partner would handle.
Okay, and who would be the partner? A private corporation?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, I think you could do a nonprofit
nonprofit.
corporation. There's
entity.
clearly nonprofit developers in the county as well as the region. I
So-
think our impression when Rich, Jenny and I met with Franklin County CDC is on the timeshare kitchen function. I think that they would rather they'd like to have a timeshare kitchen as a feeder to their,
Okay, well, that's.
but I did not get the impression that they wanted to be a manager of it.
But
They're willing
a
to-
manager of the co-work space?
No, she's talking the
No,
kitchen.
we didn't
specifically.
address the co-working space with them.
But
We
when
just
we're
focus-
talking about this option, we're thinking of somebody like the CDC to manage it, to be the
Yeah.
managing partner.
All right, yeah, I think it.
But
the
Franklin
kitchen-
County Regional Housing Redevelopment and
Yeah.
Regional Housing and Redevelopment
Yes.
Authority also does development. And the Valley CDC also does development. You're kind of between Franklin County and Northampton, so I know you're in Franklin County, but they're
Yeah.
another one to explore.
Just on the edge of it, yeah.
So
No, I did not assume necessarily town ownership. I did not assume necessarily private ownership or nonprofit ownership. I left that issue
Well,
unaddressed.
our charge was basically to assume town ownership. That
well,
was-
but Judy, can we suggest to make sure that we maximize our options, that the select board should perhaps revisit whether they are drawing a line in the sand about town ownership, and if the right opportunity presented itself about the building being sold with the appropriate covenants that
Yeah.
would go in that direction?
Oh, I think that's probably a given, but if we're talking mixed use, you're kind of talking probably two partners, I would assume. And that leads itself back to town ownership, but,
Right.
um,
Or creating a nonprofit corporation that the town would oversee.
I'm sorry, I lost power for a minute. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yes,
Oh, okay. On a side note, Jenny and Rich, I know Rich isn't attending this meeting, but you went to someplace in Greenfield, something about a kitchen. What was that about?
so that was a model of a community kitchen for us to visit and get information from. Kathy set it up. It's the CDC, Franklin County Community Development Corporation kitchen, which started out as a
Timeshare kitchen?
timeshare kitchen and then became more of a packaging partnership. And they said that there's room for a niche for timeshare kitchens still, and that while their goal is to help people develop a product to then package and sell, they're kind of beyond people who are at the very beginning of that stage because their facility is too large, and that they'd love there to be another facility that's smaller for people doing more test runs of a product. Is that
Right,
so?
and the potential users could be caterers, could be food trucks. They really thought food trucks might be a niche. They mentioned farmers and value added, and people who sell at farmers markets are more for a smaller scale timeshare kitchen. Though they pointed out that many farmers might want value added products. Farmers are in the business of growing, not necessarily in the business of processing, so sometimes farmers are interested, but they want to grow because that's their expertise. So what they often do is then provide the cooking and the processing for that. But as from a startup and testing out, a smaller timeshare kitchen could work.
Kathy, did you ever, I don't think I read it, did you ever come up with a cost estimate for the kitchen? Standalone cost for the kitchen?
Say that.
What would it cost to build the kitchen?
I put in the cost estimate based on some other
Okay.
estimates I had
What
looked
is
at.
that?
It's $350,000 for the build out of the kitchen. It is not cheap.
Right.
And kitchens, it's kind of like restaurants. If you can, restaurants cost a lot of money to build out because you gotta do the kitchen. And the adage in economic development is the first restaurant owner builds it out, the second restaurant owner kind of markets it, and the third one makes money. But, that's a tough, I'm not sure Whately wants to go through those 3 cycles. And that's a restaurant, not a timeshare kitchen, but the capital investment is very significant. I think a little closer look at what the demand is for the timeshare kitchen is, and what the niche is gonna be important. And the Franklin County CDC is providing technical assistance to the group called Launch Space. It's in Athol, which is just outside the county. It's actually in Worcester County, but it's on the Franklin County line. That's doing a timeshare kitchen. And they've gotten federal and state money on that, and they're kind of launching that. But they are in an old school building, so there's a fair amount of space. They mentioned that the Grange and Franklin County Grange and Greenfield has a timeshare kitchen, which I was not aware of. And then, I think Jenny, you reported on email that there was a farm that has a kitchen that when they're not using it for their own work, they'll rent it out.
That was the
Micro Terra.
And the Haydenville Church also has a commercial kitchen, not a lot of equipment, but they will rent it out as well. So having a little more understanding of who would be the user. I think what was helpful in the discussion when we visited the Western Mass Food Processing Center is that, they suggested we might want to find an anchor user, which I thought was a good idea. They also thought that food trucks need to have collaborate, have to have a home space.
Yeah, that's a requirement. Home base for food trucks and caterers.
So that could be an option as well. I thought it was interesting that Franklin County CDC, I think they evolved out of the timeshare kitchen in part because of cost. I think they were losing money on that. And they were losing.
Why were they losing money? Because of the upkeep or?
I am not totally clear, but I heard that and they are also running a $50,000 deficit every year on their current food process, their co-packing operation. So I think that's one of the reasons why they're very interested in having more timeshare kitchens to feed. But I think we've got to be, I like the timeshare kitchen idea. But I also know there's sometimes romance about food and restaurants and we don't want to fall into that.
Yeah. On the other
Hit,
hand,
so to speak.
if it would be a boom to the farming community, that would be huge in Whately and also huge in Grants.
And you have, according to the last agricultural census, in 22, you have 81 farms. So it may be very worthwhile to really talk to see if there's some farmers or farms who might be interested. And any who could be
Interested
a potential.
as in having a place where they can pack their cabbage or whatever, or.
That they can cook large quantities. The packaging, they'd have to still
Yeah, it's a
arrange.
commercial operation at that point, turning out products for
Yeah,
sale.
well, Keith Boswell and John Hannum both do products out
Right.
of their maple syrup, and I don't know where they get them done now, but
But it's exactly that kind of thing, cause they're selling in. Craft fairs and farmers markets and events as opposed to retailers. So that's, or
Well,
once,
it's usually, the food, in the specialty food market, you often start at, with friends, craft fairs. You might, get it at Muffins or someplace local or, at the market in South Deerfield. So you kind of try and you build the market, but then you really want to try and have one of the majors, whether it's the Big Y or Market Basket. Those tend to be a little easier to get into, but they're less oriented towards specialty and more cost conscious. Everyone wants to try and get into Whole Foods, which is, and it's not impossible, but it takes time and,
Mm.
You start with the farmers markets, you start with the small vendors that you can start to, do that. And get known and get, but once, a small timeshare kitchen can do some, but once you get to like, Franklin County, the Western Mass Food Processing Center really does when you need a run of 1,500 to, maybe 10,000 bottles. But when you're less than 2,000, that's where a smaller timeshare kitchen does. So, they're not big enough to do the 20,000 plus. I believe there's a co-packer in Bernardston that does 20,000 plus. And there's a couple other in the state. But, you gotta be in a major distribution network to require 20,000.
There's a great model for this. There's an organization actually down in the urbanest of urban places in Springfield that does hydroponic growing of vegetables and herbs, etc. And they started the same way, going to farmers markets, etc. And now they are pretty widely distributed in Big Y because Big Y is interested in local produce and the organic stuff. And it's a great story. So there is a pathway like that. I also like that because you can mix our ag dominance with and grant access with more economic development stuff, investment interests for rural areas. But my only question, and I guess I'm looking at Judy for this answer, does scale start to impact zoning?
no,
No?
no, it's use related. I think scale in this case is limited by area. I mean, the size of the building anyway, but, no, I think if it's in the label as much as anything. I used to be on the planning board, Karen. As long as it's a commercial kitchen. If you keep the label of commercial kitchen and that's what the use is, if you start to call yourself a packaging operation, then you flip into manufacturing. But I don't think there's any way any facility in this building could make that leap.
Okay, so the commercial residential zone, what is it, zone one? Would
This
be
is,
okay.
this is under a special,
You're in AR1, this says
they are one.
They are one, right? That's, yeah.
Almost make up the zone for it, right? It sounds to me like.
Well, it's under, I will take credit for this, it's under a historic building repurposing
Right.
bylaw that outlines particular kinds of things, and I think that a commercial kitchen would fit there easily, as would a childcare, as would, an office is allowed. And that bylaw waives the traditional parking and some of the other setback requirements and that sort of thing, so.
But I think it's a good marriage. I really do, because of I think people would get excited about it. I think economic development, rural investment, ag, I just think it's a good marriage.
That's where I come out too with the caution that Kathy made, that we're really not sure of the demand, but
Right.
Right, and that's, you know, that becomes the next step to actually talk to farmers, because what CDC said to us was when they talked to the farmers, they were excited about having a kitchen, but then they didn't actually show up to use it.
well,
So, but that's okay, that's there.
you look at that farm report that came out from the state.
the one that just came out in I read that yesterday afternoon, and it didn't really mention specific, at least in the recommendations. I haven't read all the minutes of all the hearings they had. They really didn't talk about value-added products. They talked about
interesting.
really land use and protecting farms. They did mention the need to go to market, but it was more trying to protect farmland and have economic viability, and maybe on some state grants that assist farmers, not make them 100% reimbursement, but allow for some front end money. So,
Yeah, but it did demonstrate a need for
right,
more income, clearly, and
definitely, because it was saying that basically was farmers were making, I think, 96 cents on every dollar of cost for production, so that they were running a deficit of about, a 4 to 5% deficit.
Well, I certainly agree that anything that can go into this building to help support farmers is something that the town would get excited about. And we just need to marry it with enough other stuff that either is getting enough use by town people that the town will support costs for it, or makes enough income to pay for the costs of it.
I'm intrigued by the home. The need for a home base for caterers, because Quant and is so successful as a facility use, and they have a list of caterers and are probably always people looking for new caterers, and it's a kind of business that I think a lot of people get into, and having a facility nearby that would help. I don't know, with Micotera, it's a mushroom farm. I don't know, I assume they use it for their, I don't know what, I don't eat mushrooms, so I don't. But I know they haven't, they say they would like more users, but I haven't seen any evidence that they are marketing, or I don't know what kind of equipment they have.
Right, we don't know that either, but it became, one of several
understand. I
places,
just
like
thought-
the one Jonathan just mentioned,
those
to
that
look
it's-
at.
Yeah, of course.
That Kate, the woman who toured us, said Holyoke Hummus does their hummus making there in Microterra.
Okay.
That's all we know so far. Okay, so we're saying we would like to create a combination of some model of a commercial kitchen, community workspace, and childcare option. That's the mix we're leaning towards, we're recommending. And, or let me not say it that way, that we want to search for partners for.
Yes, I would say you're right.
Yeah,
Okay.
What about
Okay,
Paula and Steve? I mean, do you guys agree?
yeah,
Well,
Kathy, what-
yeah,
I'm ambivalent about the childcare. Sorry, about the childcare. I think that encompasses just a lot of questions and regulations. I'd rather go for the multi-use, what we've been talking about, catering, the kitchen, that kind of thing, office space. Um,
Yeah, and,
yeah,
the
I-
mixed
Paula,
use two,
go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
no, the mixed use two scenario is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's why, to Paula's point, that's why I keep thinking about it in terms of sort of the partners or whomever the operational mechanism is, whatever the operational mechanism is, would offer child care support, sort of, oh, you need a couple hours, so you have a couple high school kids, or so it's not a true childcare, but it is a place where people can get their work done, and have the ability at a cost to have their kids entertained and not have them pulling on the mom or dad on a regular basis. That's I think that gets around Paula's justifiable regulatory concerns a little bit. Kathy's looking at me with curiosity.
Yeah, I understand wanting to kind of, have a path for minimum dealing with regulation. I'm just not sure how feasible that is. Feasible is probably not the right word, but I could see where you might end up with needing to conform to regulation. I mean,
I don't think we could go out and say we're.
Right.
yeah, no, I
But are
mean,
they as stringent regulations is my point.
Isn't this up to the part, that's one of the, maybe we say that's one of the features we'd like in a partner is if they can work something like that in.
Yeah.
But I think we still need.
I mean, it's one thing if you have occasional childcare, like when you're having a meeting or doing an event, yes, there's some child activities, then you're not triggering it. But if you're doing it on a regular basis, I'd be a little concerned. If you had it as a partnership with the school, you probably are okay. So
Ooh.
maybe your comment about high school students and, but
Maybe there's a way to work it out.
yeah, I mean,
Technical,
well,
that's not our problem.
right, I mean-
but you had no problem, when I looked at it, you had no problems meeting the 75 per square foot per child. Excuse me, the 35 square foot for internal space per child and being able to serve 25 plus kids. The real issue was your outdoor play space. You have the space for it. You don't presently have any amenities for it. But there's room to, on the 2,000, we allocated on the site plan, 2,000 square feet. If you wanted to think incrementally, we didn't, price, doing a playground out. Playgrounds are not as cheap as people think.
No, there's
They're more, but I will say, you could probably think the beginning of July, and probably you might need a letter of intent in May, I don't know. DCR always Department of Conservation and Recreation always has a parks grant application. I don't know the status of your open space plan, that we
It's pretty new.
would need to check on that if you have it.
Yeah, it was.
But this might be a place where maybe you ask for a small parks grant or a parks grant and just do a playground area.
It's good to know the elementary school has an application before the CPC now for playground at the elementary school. It's $100,000, which was a little more than,
$100,000 is cheap for a playground.
well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And you want to make it, and I'm showing my biases here. Maybe you want to make it really nice. You don't want to make it look like it's half baked. And again, I mentioned before that my wife's on the board of the Amherst College Daycare because she's an employee of the college, and I give her a hard time all the time because Amherst endowment is about $6 billion, and their playground looks like it was put together with $25. It's hard to do, and for upkeep, and it's just hard to do, and it is expensive, but that's neither here
But
nor
it also opens the door though to talking about the outside, which we haven't really done in a while. And personally, I think thinking about the exterior space as a park that has community space and some amount of playground space is something we should be doing anyway. Whether it's feeding, co-working space or not. I think it's part of what will make the space attractive to our residents, to the people who come through on bikes, which I still think is relevant. So I mean, what I hear is that our conclusion is we want to work towards finding partners that will support some model of a commercial kitchen, a co-working space that may or may not include provision for childcare, and exterior space that has art and play space aspects.
Yeah. Yes, I would agree with that. My concern is about the dedicated playground space for use. And I think I said it before, and maybe I'm the bad guy, but there's a playground at the elementary school that nobody uses unless they're in school there. I mean, it's not something that I've ever seen. And again, I don't make a habit of driving down Long Plain Road every day, but I've never seen anybody using it.
That's why they're replacing. That's why they're upgrading.
Well, that may, okay, yeah.
All I can say is, as a resident with kids who are not small anymore, but we went to both the elementary school and the center school play areas because they were close and available. And the reason you don't see a lot of kids there is because there's not that many, there's less small kids in town at one point, but this is one of the ways to be more inviting. And maybe you won't get a lot of use, but
Very, very valid point. If we want to attract young people and young families, then you have to give them, if you build it, will they come?
and maybe they won't, but
Very, very valid point.
my kids grew up here and they loved the center school, tiny little play area that was there. And also went to the elementary school. So kids will use what's available.
But Jonathan, going back to your notion of maybe we can like figure a path to slide where parents could do co-working. If you had what I would call more of a destination type playground that, oh, I really want to go there. It's not just the swings, but something that really sparks kids' imagination. You could easily have kids playing on the playground you know, and especially if there was some kind of fencing or perimeter so that they don't accidentally run into, Chestnut Plain Road or Christian Lane. But that could, you know, and parents felt comfortable with their kids out there, they could work and their kids could play for a couple, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that. What would be, I'm kind of curious, and I have no idea. It's obviously an undulating field to the left of the center school as you look at the center school. What would it cost to level that? And that means a lot of fill. But what would that, does anybody have any sense of what that might cost? Because I think leveling it would be a big part of making it an attractive and usable space.
I'm not sure I agree, since kids like rolling, they like unlevel ground. But
Also, you get in complications with the mill pond.
I mean, but making more, some of it flat, we need to do, though it is somewhat flatter at the bottom. I mean, closer to Christian Lane,
Yeah.
it is somewhat flatter, but, you know, this is. No, I have no idea, when we talked about just talk to a excavator, you know, landscaping.
But you know it's going to be a lot. I mean, I think if you got a project that's already estimated at 4.3 million, the idea of adding anything, 4.3 million plus $350,000 kitchen, I don't think I would recommend adding any additional costs.
Well, I
Okay.
don't think kitchen cost was an addition, it was part of that.
Yeah,
But-
I included the kitchen cost
But we're still-
in it, but on a playground, you could easily be at 350 or 4. That's, I mean, to be
100.
honest. But it is something that you could do more quickly than building redevelopment. So, and I would say the Conway School of Design, which focuses on landscape, they're looking for student projects. I got an email yesterday about that,
Great
so
suggestion.
I think they usually ask for a small amount of money, maybe a few $100s. I did not, they didn't say in their email. They would not do necessarily construction drawings, but that might be a resource that to move quickly. You know, you've also worked with Berkshire Design before, who's a landscape architect, in Northampton, because I was a sub to them on the, Interchange 35 study. So there are some professionals who you've worked with. There are other landscape architects in the area.
Right, well, Taylor, whatever his name is, did the sidewalks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that,
Oh, yeah.
but that was started with a Conway School Design
Okay,
study,
okay.
which the CPC paid for, but I think because it's a historic landscape, and that's an issue too, because changing the profile of land, I think, would be a no-no under.
I just, because it's not like you can kick a soccer ball for any length of space around there. And if you're into sports, it's a playground, but it's not a field for sports, for even for little kids. I mean,
No,
But we don't need that, we just built more fields at Hurley. We don't need a team space.
no, but even three kids kicking a soccer ball around when their moms or dads are working is something that's going to be appealing for some people.
And
you could
I
do
think the
frisbee or
space for
catch
that,
or that kind of stuff.
I think the space for that is there if it's fenced in.
Yeah, because we're talking about little kids, and little kids will find a way, even if it's just 3 little kids, they'll find a way to make it happen. Yeah, I don't think we don't need a big field up at where the center school is.
I think you'll find up to 10-year-old.
I don't even think
Yeah.
we need a huge playground because again, kids will find a way to enjoy.
Okay. My next question, which goes back to talking to the select board, is, are we as a committee prepared to keep going and researching partners for these ideas?
I am.
Diane?
Somebody needs to.
Awesome.
I mean,
Okay.
I was going to volunteer. I could even write up a sort of a business plan for what we just talked about as a not as a final document, but as a trial balloon, just as a this is just so people could wrap their arms around something instead of trying to wrap their heads around something nebulous. But
Well, check out what Kathy did first, because the bulk of it is there.
It's always excellent to have more drafting. So if you can look at what Kathy has and put it, see, I don't really even know what it means to say a business plan, but other people do. So, and you do. So if you can, take a stab at something that people can look at as a first draft.
Can I ask a question? We don't know whether the select board has seen this report yet.
Correct, I don't know. They haven't discussed it yet, and their next meeting was
28th.
28.
At some point, I would imagine that they're gonna ask this committee what its opinion is.
That's what she's
That's-
discussing.
That's what I'm trying to prepare, and I think Jonathan just offered a document to help with
Yeah.
that presentation.
Oh,
Is that,
I think he's aiming at it.
that would couple with Kathy's work. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we need to write a sort of an overview of what's
What-
there, because
what
they're
we're
not
gonna
gonna read the whole thing.
right,
They won't,
No.
without the kind of discussions we've had, I don't think they digested it.
What I did focused on on the building construction and more the real estate piece. Well, what I think Jonathan's referring to is you have to make sure the user is also financially viable.
Yeah.
And while I did not include it in the report, I did do some, testing. I saw that child, in terms of the number of children and also what the standard costs of, childcare fees and and looking at, some of the, costs of staffing, you could make childcare work. I think the question is, you need probably at least 100, you need, quite a few members to make co-working work. But I didn't break it down by how much hourly rate revenues you could. And it also depends upon, so I think that's something to be, explored. And on the timeshare kitchen, I think you gotta explore to see if you can find an anchor user. Because
I think we need to be careful going to the select board about not giving them too much information. Because we've been,
it may be a two-step process.
I think-
We looked at the real estate. Let's narrow down the uses and then let's look at some of the business operation pieces.
yeah. Because all they've heard so far is, I think we've only updated them as far as the structural
okay,
analysis, and they haven't seen anything else. And there's a lot else. And I don't think we're talking maybe a 15-20 minute discussion probably.
okay,
And we've gotta somehow, so my thought was that we take an overview of what's here.
what Kathy has done.
All of this, the steps, the expertise that was brought, for kind of without going into too much detail, I don't think I would, we can say there are floor plans, there are cost estimates, but you don't need to talk to them during this. You don't need to flush them out, is what I'm trying to say.
Right, we need to,
And then say, based on this, our general preferences are this. But our next steps are that, and kind of leave it there and get their advice. And, ask for their help too.
So we're talking about giving them a synopsis of Kathy's work, our conclusions, recommendations, preferences, however the best way to word it is, and our proposed next steps, and
And
asking for their approval for that revision of that, of our, at least revising our next steps and suggestions.
so what is, in simplest words, our proposed next step?
Reaching out to okay, so hold that thought 1 second. Reach out to farmers, to evaluate interest in value-based products.
We have to be too detailed here. I think if we just say we're gonna research potential partners, then they might include nonprofits for daycare,
Yeah.
um,
But
farmers, caterers, that kind of thing.
do the next steps also include this long list of potential grants with the USDA and the underutilized property? I mean, this could take a long time.
You need to, I learned with the underutilized property, and I'm sure it's true with the others, you need to have the partner first.
Okay, well, so partners first, okay. Well, then good, that makes sense.
I will say, if you and the select board are very interested in the timeshare kitchen, I think you need to look at the US EDA, US Economic Development Administration. There is a March deadline for disaster relief funds. Normally, you would not qualify for EDA, but you were part of a disaster declaration back in 2023 when there was a lot of flooding of farmland area here. So if you could say this is part of your strategy to help support local farmers who were negatively impacted by this disaster, blah, 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 and you could even use the current report that, with the Legislative Agriculture Study Commission on state of farming in Massachusetts that says farms are, losing money. So therefore, value-added products are really important, and could be a huge piece of, huge chunk of change. And that is probably the one I think most time sensitive, because you're eligible now. Usually, people who were in the 2023, 2024 disaster declarations are still eligible. And you have it was a statewide disaster declaration, and the reference is in the report.
Caroline, can you look into that?
Yeah. So is that
But
the
back to
only,
the point that the next step would be to seek partners,
Yeah.
primarily
Right.
to seek partners, even though there are some grants that there's time sensitivity. But
Well-
most of them, we would have to have a partner in mind, because my biggest problem getting my mind around this proposal is who are these partners?
Well, that's,
I also think that if we have possible pathways of funding, it's going to make it easier to get the partners or to get them excited about partnering with us, as opposed to looking at them and saying, yeah, we'd like you as a partner. Now you go do the work. If we show them that we've done a little bit of preliminary legwork on funding pathways, concepts, so that we're not starting from scratch with them and making them do all the work, I think that's going to make the finding the partners easier.
Well, yeah, but it sounds like there's a little bit of a catch-22, that a lot of these grants, if we don't have a partner, we really can't start going after them, so.
Yeah, people
Jonathan?
want it more thought out. It just can't be an idea, because you've
Right.
gotta have a plan.
Check the list of grants that Kathy put in the report, Jonathan, because it's pretty extensive. It's a good starting place, and
Okay, so,
I'd be happy to write an overview
great.
to try to write it.
Have we answered Jonathan's question about a business plan?
Thought he made an offer.
I thought he made an offer.
Yeah, it wasn't a question, it was an offer, I think.
Okay,
But
all right.
I don't want to write something that you guys aren't interested in.
Well, if we're looking for partners, we then need to have something to give them.
Absolutely.
So that, I think, is what you're drafting.
Yeah,
And that might mean more than one, because we're talking about a couple different functions.
Yeah.
So it would be a different one to childcare providers than to
kitchen.
kitchen development.
I
Yeah.
think you gotta make sure your select board's behind you on doing these next steps.
Yeah,
Right.
well.
Well, but I also think that the select board's going to get excited if they see a lot of work, more work, and here are the next steps. They're going
Yeah.
to. I don't think they're going to say no if they see us continuing down our path already, and they're going to get excited about it.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Again, I know that I spent a couple years there, and I know that if people came to us when I was there, we were excited to see the enthusiasm. If we felt like there was lukewarm, yeah, this is what we're thinking about, then we didn't have that same enthusiasm. And I don't know, that's just my 2 cents.
I think you're right, Jonathan. I think what people respect if you've done your spade work and, come in confidently and say, this is what we're gonna do, and here's our plan of action for the next, we're gonna do A, B, C, D, and E. And, we're on our way. But if you're like, well, it's like,
Right. You could even do, 2 or 3 different P&L statements around possible scenarios that might work, and show, using a lot of Kathy's work, you can show what the minimum usage would be to make the mixed use viable. And and again, there's no guarantees, but at least you're showing that you've seen a viable path. Does it pan out? You can't guarantee that, but there is a pathway, and it's not pie in the sky.
What was the initials he used? The letters, he said, what did it mean?
Oh, profit and loss statement.
Other loss.
Thank you. So you're suggesting to prepare something like that for the select board?
As a draft, yeah. And that would be part of the business plan. The business
we
plan
do
is not just narrative.
Well, let's see what he can do.
Okay,
Yeah, let's see what he does.
you're offering to draft something?
Yes.
Great,
Great.
okay, so their meeting is the 28th. I can go, but I do not need to present. Other people?
I think you should, because you're the chair of the group.
If I do an overview, can somebody do a slide presentation from it? Or should I just focus? I could do the slide presentation, and maybe that's the way to go.
I can help, Judy.
it always helps to practice ahead of time. And maybe I'm saying the obvious, but I've seen a lot of people not. Because we all have really busy lives, so.
Good point.
Yeah.
So we should schedule a practice session.
Mhm. Okay. The 28th is
Wednesday.
a Wednesday, is it 2 Wednesdays from now, really?
Wednesday, yesterday, which was the 14th.
Two from yesterday? Yeah,
Do we share it with them ahead of time? I would think so.
Yeah, we.
Oh, yeah,
there's a-
I
Oh.
would,
So the
That's where
Friday before needs to be our,
so do we meet in a week?
Well, there's two steps here. There's getting the materials and then there's practicing materials, I think. So, yeah, I think probably we should meet them.
but I also don't think we should be sending them anything without everybody on this committee reviewing it.
yeah,
Well, that's,
100%.
That gives us time.
So if we meet in a week, is that for practice or is that to finalize the materials?
Materials.
Material, yeah.
Okay. Are we, the 10:30 next Thursday?
The 20,
Not Thursday, when, yeah, no, yes, Thursday,
yeah, that's,
yes,
Works for me.
lovely.
Yeah, we used to meet on Wednesday, but we're changing it to meet your schedule.
Thank you.
Yeah.
do we want to give us an extra day and try for Friday?
Does Friday work for you?
Yeah, Friday afternoon would work for me.
Okay,
Really? Are
Yeah.
you working?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I work on Friday afternoons, but we're remotely because the offices are closed.
Offices are closed, so it would have to be a Zoom meeting.
We can't open the offices?
We
Why can't we
probably,
meet on Thursday?
I was just giving an extra day. Thursday's fine. That's fine.
let's do Thursday,
let's stay with Thursday.
10:30 to 12.
Okay,
Well, and could you put the Kathy's report and the appendix up on the center school webpage, so I'd like to forward it to the historical commission. What would the which historical commission, the what report, Kathy?
okay, I was gonna send it to us. I've already started that email, so, but they're not mutually exclusive. I just wanted to make sure I heard everything.
Well,
Oh, you mean this one, right? I'm sorry, I was thinking the interchange 35.
yeah,
Yeah,
this one,
no, this
so people
this
can
one, yes,
access it, and
okay,
there's a CPC meeting next Thursday, and I would like to sort of tell them it exists and it's up there, but I don't, give them just a synopsis of the four scenarios, but
okay,
leave it at that.
all right. So Judy's drafting something, Jonathan's drafting something. Two of you are working on slides. Carolyn, you're pursuing that USDA piece. Is there another piece?
Do you want me to talk? Do you want me to talk to Paul to feel him out?
Not yet.
Paul Mark.
Hallmark. Okay. Sure. We did have a communication at one point with Rosenberg's aide. So
But he's been gone for 15 years,
Years.
20 years.
Listen, let me go back and look.
We didn't know what we were doing.
No, we didn't know what we were doing. I guess I just want to be clear whether you're telling them an update or starting something new. So let me,
I'm sniffing
let
around
me
to
go.
see if, I would be sniffing around to see if he thought there would be any possible option, a viable
Fred
option for a line item.
Yeah, Fred Barron spoke with somebody's aide.
Yeah, but this is
And I don't-
different. This is, he's using a personal.
Yeah, no, I just want to go back through the records and see if you're bringing up a subject that is brand new to him or that we have talked to his aide about once.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I will-
That'd be good.
I will do
That's good.
that.
That's good.
And I'll get back in touch with you. That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? I will try and make a list of some of the kitchens we want to talk about, and we have had ongoing suggestions about possible partners. So I'll just try and list those things and put them all in one place. Okay,
In preparing for the select board meeting, I think we should be aware that the press will likely be there. And they're a good source of outreach as well, so if we're,
an excellent point.
I mean,
What
we have our act together, but I think it's also a way to get a message across about what
Yeah.
we're thinking about.
what time do they meet these days?
Thank you for asking that.
5:30 or 6, I can check though.
Yeah. It's pretty early, I mean, early for the evening.
Thank you for remembering to ask that.
You might also want to back up a little bit. Step one is really protecting the building and making it
Yes.
weather tight. So that,
That's
you
been
know,
done.
I think you need to recall, brief the select board on what you've done in terms of looking
Yeah.
at
Sure.
the issue of the roof.
That's
Yeah.
done. That's done.
But
She should be part of
Yeah,
our
yeah,
presentation. Oh, by the way,
Right.
we've already
Yeah, this
And-
is,
stayed the bill.
this is what we've done.
towards that end, though, does that make the underutilized municipal building grant one to pursue? To have on our list to do now, because we know that there's structural work.
We did pursue that, and we got back the answer. One is too small for house, 2 units isn't enough, and
Okay.
2, you need a partner.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that was the one where they said we have to be farther than where we are now.
right.
Yeah,
And that's
Right,
what I'm
okay,
hearing, yeah.
no, I'm checking your memory, I'm not challenging you.
When is that grant due? The underutilized municipal building grant?
I'm sorry, Jonathan, I talked over you.
When is the underutilized building grant due?
June 1st.
Okay, so
No, you have to express interest. And there's no way, and I don't,
that was my question.
talking next year,
What's the cutoff in terms of getting going?
I think we have to have our act together by beginning of March or end of March.
Okay,
Okay, we're we're moving forward, it's slow, but it's steady.
Yeah.
So, and everybody's engaged in pieces, so thank you all, and we'll meet in a week.
I didn't hear the time of the select board meeting.
6.
6, okay, thank you.
On the 28th, yeah.